Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling a term that, I have to be honest, when I first saw it, I thought we were pivoting into magazine publishing. Free issue items.
It does have that ring to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like something you grab at an airport because you forgot a book.
Free is usually a word we like. It sounds like a bonus, a perk.
Exactly. But in the world we're diving into, heavy industry, massive construction projects, free issue seems to mean something completely different. And based on these documents we have, this guide and a contract template called SB 17E2.13, it seems free, actually means incredibly expensive.
And loaded with risk. That's a much more accurate way to put it.
It's not a gift.
Not at all. In this context, it's a transfer of control. And, in the project world, whenever you move control from one person to another, you're also moving a massive amount of liability.
Okay, so to get everyone on the same page, let me try an analogy that was running through my head. Imagine I hire a world-class chef to cater a huge banquet.
Sounds good so far.
Right. I'm paying a fortune for this person to handle everything. But then I step in and say, hang on, don't buy the steak, and don't buy the vegetables. I'll go to the market myself. I'll pick out the meat, and I'll just hand them to you when you show up.
That is the perfect free issue scenario. You, the client, or the employer, as the contract calls them, are supplying the materials to the contractor.
But my question is, why on earth would I do that? If I hire a professional, I want them to do the shopping. If I buy the steak and it's tough or I forget something,
Right.
the chef is just going to look at me and say, don't blame me, you bought the groceries.
And you've just hit on the fundamental tension of this whole topic. That exact problem is what we call interface risk.
Interface risk.
The reason you do it isn't because you enjoy grocery shopping. It's usually because you feel like you don't have a choice. Or rather, you don't have the time.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive, to unpack that logic. Why would an employer volunteer for this headache? What are the financial risks? We have to talk about this term, pre-FID, and how does this contract template act as a sort of damage control manual?
We're going to look at the machinery of the deal because when you peel it all back, this is really a story about speed versus liability.
Let's start with speed then. The source material talks a lot about the EPC schedule. That's engineering, procurement, and construction.
Yeah.
The argument is what? That the employer buys things because the contractor is too slow.
Not necessarily slow, just late to the party. Think about the timeline of one of these mega projects. You don't just wake up and hire a contractor for a chemical plant.
Sure, it takes months.
Months, sometimes a year, just to negotiate the main contract. But while the lawyers are wrestling over that, the clock on your construction deadline is already ticking, and the lead times for major equipment, they're just getting longer and longer.
How long are we talking?
For some specialized items, like a huge compressor, it can be 2 years. Yes. So if you wait until the contractor is officially signed on to order that compressor, you might find out the factory is booked solid. And your whole project is dead in the water before you've even poured a drop of concrete.
Okay, so this is what the guide calls early procurement. I'm basically jumping the line. I'm buying the engine before I've even hired the person to build the car.
Precisely. You are securing the manufacturing slot. It's a strategic move to de-risk the schedule. You buy the long lead items now so they're physically ready when the contractor finally arrives on site.
But there's a huge catch here that I want to drill into. The text mentions pre-FID, final investment decision. What does that actually mean for the person signing the checks?
FID is the point of no return. It's the moment the board says, yes, we are officially funding this, here is the $1 billion. Before FID, the project is just, well, it's just an idea on a PowerPoint slide.
Wait a minute. So if I'm doing early procurement to beat the schedule, I'm buying all this equipment before the final investment decision.
Yes. You are spending millions of dollars on hardware for a project that technically doesn't exist yet.
That seems incredibly reckless. What if the project gets canceled? What if the board votes no?
Then you have a very, very expensive problem. The source material is quite specific about this. It talks about cancellation fees. If you order a custom turbine and then call the manufacturer 6 months later to say, actually, never mind, they don't just say, no worries.
Of course not. They've already bought steel. They've booked factory time.
And the source notes that those cancellation costs can run up to 10% of the purchase price.
So if a compressor package costs, say, $20 million,
Easily.
you could be writing a check for $2 million just to walk away.
That is money you have just set on fire. It's a sunk cost with zero return. It's buying the steak before you even know if you'll have a kitchen to cook it in.
That really puts the stakes in perspective. Okay, so we know why we're doing it. It's a desperate move for speed. Now let's look at what is actually being bought. The documents break it down into 3 categories.
Right. And the first is the big one, equipment.
The guide splits this into critical equipment and long lead equipment. Is that an important distinction?
It is, yeah. Long lead is just about the delivery time. But critical equipment is about performance. It's the heart of the plant.
The template lists things like electrolyzers, compressors.
Exactly. If you're building a green hydrogen plant, the electrolyzer is the plant. As the employer, you might have a specific technology you have to use. You don't want the contractor choosing some other brand.
So it's a quality control thing. I'm buying it because I don't trust you to buy the right one.
Or I'm buying it because I have a global deal with this supplier and get a better price. It's strategic.
I also saw SCADAD-CS systems on that list. And that's the control system, right? The software.
It's the brain of the whole operation, and this is often a free issue item because the employer wants standardization. If you have 10 plants around the world, you want them all running the same operating system.
That makes perfect sense. It's like corporate IT. You don't let the builder decide what firewall to install in your office.
Exactly right. Okay, so category 2 is materials. This gets into things like special metals and catalysts.
Why would an employer bother buying pipes? That seems like basic contractor work.
Usually it is, but the source points to market scarcity. Imagine there's a global shortage of a specific nickel alloy you need for high-pressure pipes.
So the employer, as a huge company, can flex their purchasing power and secure a supply that a smaller contractor couldn't.
They corner the market to make sure their own project doesn't stall.
Okay, that makes sense. But category 3 was the one that really threw me. Services.
Yes. This is the one people often forget.
How can you free issue a service? Isn't the whole point of a contractor that they provide the services?
Well, the lines get a bit blurry here. The text gives a great example. Site security for OBL.
OBL. Let's break that down.
Outside battery limits. The battery limit is the fence around your specific construction zone. OBL is everything else on the site, like an existing operating refinery.
Right. And that refinery already has its own security force.
Exactly. They have protocols, badges, armed guards. You don't want the contractor hiring some random third-party security firm to wander around a live, potentially explosive facility.
So the employer just says, use our guys.
Use our guys. We will issue the security service to you. You manage them, but it's our contract.
The other example was catalyst loading.
That sounds incredibly niche.
It is, and it's incredibly high risk. You're dumping tons of expensive, hazardous chemicals into a reactor. If you do it wrong, the reactor doesn't work. It's a one-shot deal.
So again, the employer carves out that specific risk and says, I have specialists for this. I'll hire them. You just stand back.
It's all about control. Project management is, at its core, a form of organized control freakery.
I think you're right. So we got the why and the what. Now the how. We have this document, Employer Requirement E2.13. This is where it's real, right? This is the rule book. This is the rule book for logistics, and this is where projects live or die. It's not enough to say, I bought the compressor. You have to define exactly how that 50-ton box gets from a factory in Germany to a muddy field in Texas.
And this is where we get into the Incoterms.
Incoterms, yes. A few little letters that determine who pays when the ship sinks.
The drafting notes in the source highlight 2 options, EXW and DDP. And the difference looks huge.
It's night and day. It completely shifts the burden. Let's start with EXW, X-Works.
Okay, so if I'm the employer and I tick that box, what am I doing to my contractor?
You are giving them a massive headache. X-Works means the manufacturer just leaves the equipment on their loading dock. They say, it's here, come and get it.
So the employer buys it, but the contractor has to arrange the shipping, the cranes, everything.
Everything. And the drafting note is brutal. It says if EXW is selected, the contractor is responsible for transport, including export and import permits and duties.
Whoa. So if the compressor gets stuck in customs in a foreign port, that's the contractor's problem.
It's their problem. Even though they didn't buy it, they have to get it through the border. It's a huge risk for them.
That feels like a trap. I'd be charging a massive premium to take on that risk.
And you should. Now compare that to the other option, DDP delivered, duty paid.
Which sounds like the Amazon Prime option.
That's a great way to put it. The supplier is responsible for everything. They drop it off at the construction site, taxes paid, paperwork done.
So much cleaner.
Much cleaner for the contractor. But the employer has to make that choice line by line for every single item. If you leave it blank, you're just inviting a lawsuit.
There was one other section in here that seems small but crucial. Free issue startup items.
Ah, yes, Section 5.
It lists things like demin water, chemicals, and power. power? Don't they have plugs on a construction site?
Not if you're building in the middle of a desert. The contractor needs huge amounts of power for welding, for cranes. If the employer doesn't provide a tie-in point, the contractor has to bring in enormous diesel generators.
Which costs a fortune.
A fortune. So free issuing electricity is a major cost saver. Same with demineralized water. You need pure water to flush the new pipes. You can't just use a garden hose.
Right, you'll corrode the brand new equipment.
So the employer agrees to open the tap, so to speak. But again, if that water pressure drops and the schedule is delayed...
It's the employer's fault.
Exactly, because they failed to supply their free issue item.
And that brings us right back to the dark side of this, the interface risk.
Yeah.
The guide we read was very blunt about it.
It creates a gap in liability. Let's go back to your chef.
Okay.
If the chef buys the steak and he burns it, he eats the cost.
Right.
But if you buy the steak and you deliver it 3 hours late, the dinner is ruined. The chef says, I was ready to cook. You failed to supply the ingredients. You still have to pay me my full fee.
In construction, that's a delay claim.
Massive ones. If that critical compressor arrives 2 months late, the contractor has thousands of workers standing around, idle, and they will bill the employer for every single minute of that downtime.
So by trying to speed things up, the employer has pointed a loaded gun directly at their own foot.
That's the risk, yes.
So how do they get out of it? The source mentioned a kind of legal magic trick called novation.
Novation. It's a brilliant legal escape hatch.
How does it work?
It's a way to transfer a contract. So the employer does the hard work. They find the supplier. They negotiate the price. They place the order pre-FID. They take all that early risk.
They get the ball rolling.
But the moment the main contractor is hired, the employer says, okay, see this purchase order for the compressor. It's yours now.
They just hand it off.
They legally substitute the contractor into the deal. The contractor steps into the employer's shoes. Suddenly, the supplier answers to the contractor.
So if the compressor's late after that point?
It's the contractor's problem to manage. The employer washes their hands of the interface risk.
That is incredibly clever. It's like playing hot potato with a live grenade. You hold it just long enough to get things started, then you toss it to the contractor.
It is. And contractors know this is coming. They will often charge a fee to accept that novated contract because they're inheriting a risk they didn't create.
It's just a fascinating game of chess. You want the speed of doing it yourself, but the safety of blaming someone else.
That is the essence of modern contracting, managing the gaps.
Okay, so let's try to pull this all together. Free issue items aren't about getting something for free. They're a strategic lever for speed.
Speed is the main driver. Early procurement lets you beat the global supply chain crunch on critical items.
But it requires real bravery, or at least deep pockets from the employer, to spend all that money pre-FID.
With that 10% cancellation fee hanging over your head.
Then you have the logistics battle, the choice between EXW and DDP, which decides who does all the hard work of getting the item to the site.
And finally, the end game is to close that liability gap with novation, to hand the problem over to the contractor.
It really changes how you look at a construction site. You see a crane lifting something, and now I'm just wondering, who bought that? Who shipped it? And who's going to get sued if it's late?
The answer is always buried deep in the fine print.
Speaking of fine print, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought from reading these documents.
The drafting notes.
Yeah. All through the template, there are these little italicized notes. Drafting note, delete after reading, drafting mode, select option A or B.
Standard stuff for legal templates. You clean it up before you sign.
But the source explicitly says these notes are to be deleted before the final contract is issued.
Right. You want a clean document.
But think about what's lost when you hit delete. Those notes contain the intent. They explain why we chose EXW over DDP. They explain the reasoning behind the rule.
That's a really profound point. You're left with the rule, but you lose the logic.
Exactly. So 5 years from now, when the project ends up in a dispute, the lawyers are just looking at a checkbox. They don't see the warning that was in the drafting note that got deleted.
It's the invisible ink of the deal.
So for everyone listening, whether you're building a power plant or just negotiating a contract at work, are the most important decisions, the real context, hidden in the margins, and what happens when you delete them.
Something to think about next time you press backspace.
On that note, we're going to wrap this deep dive. Thanks for sticking with us through the weeds of procurement. We'll see you on the next one.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.